Hello and welcome to the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah Caffee, and our theme in season 2 has been Tools of the Trade, the pros behind the process. And today I am joined by my dear friend, Jonathan Aymin, founder of Common Sense Events. Well, welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me, Tirzah.
Oh my gosh, we've got some fun stuff for you today, but you know how we always start. It is time for crazy stories of Tirzah because people have lost their minds. Here's the story for today. I was literally just before the show, I had a few ideas kind of swirling around, and I was thinking about the name of Jonathan's business, Common Sense, and I was like, what is like a totally lack of common sense thing that has happened? I totally love the name of your business, by the way. It's fantastic. And so this is a little bit of it's a COVID story. I hate to say the C word, but here it is. I was dealing with, 65 couples that were affected by the closure in North Carolina. And our state was a little different than some others. We were very, very strict. Thank you to our governor. But our wedding venues were specifically listed with arenas, like big ball fields and football fields and all this kind of stuff, which obviously made no common sense. But so it was challenging for us. 65 couples that were affected. And so what would happen is the brides would feel like, well, I'm going to sick my fiance or my dad on Tirzah so that we could get our way. So I was dealing with a lot of men, like very strong male energy coming at me, thinking that, oh, little old Tirzah is just gonna like bend over and whatever. Obviously, they don't know me. So I had this one dad in particular that was insisting on talking to me. So I get on the phone, he gives me all of his complaints, I listen, I do the lovely customer service thing. And then towards the end of our conversation, he really was not liking the solutions that I was offering. We could do a cancellation, give you, refund. We could give you, I gave on average at least 10 different dates that people could postpone to. I was very reasonable, right? I was not trying to be a jerk. So at the end, he was just angry. He's yelling at me and he literally says, Tirzah, this is all your fault. And I was like, wait, excuse me, I don't think I heard you correctly. So I literally said, excuse me, sir, I think I may have misheard you. Can you repeat that? And he said, you heard me right. This is all your fault. And I'm just like, wow, the power that I have. Tirzah Caffee created a global pandemic just to destroy my businesses. Come on, give me a break. How does that make any common sense? And at this point, I was like, nothing that is going to come out of my mouth is going to be good for this situation, or please God, I just know I must get off this call. So I was like, sir, I think we've discussed everything that we can at this time, and I will speak to your daughter. And all communication will be with her moving forward. And I just hung up the phone. I'm like, I cannot. Anyway, I yelled to my husband. I was like, guess what, Bradley? This pandemic is all my fault. Oh my gosh. Anyway, zero common sense at all. So there you have it, guys. COVID was Tirzah Caffee's fault. So anyway, sometimes it's come up several times on the podcast, the things that we have gone through during that season. And I will say this again, it really thickened my skin a lot. I realized it really helped me improve my customer service too. And dealing with angry people, because you learn a lot about yourself and about how to deal with challenging situations. And I feel like now any challenge that comes up in my business, it's like nothing compared to that time. And I feel really adequate to deal with it in a professional way. So anyway, that's my story. Okay. So Jonathan, it's so exciting to have you here. When I was starting the season and just thinking of those key people that the audience needs to hear from, and when we're talking about tools of the trade, I really think what you do is so incredibly important, because I'm seeing, and we'll talk about this probably more in the show today, a real increase in people that are wanting to take a step back from their businesses and not necessarily let go of their legacy properties or things like that, but they're getting to the point where maybe they're aging out of physically being able to do their businesses, but they don't really want to let go of it. And so it's so great to have you here. Tell listeners, if they don't know about you, just a little bit about CSE and what it is that you do, and then we'll jump into the meat and potatoes we have today.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's interesting. Smiled to myself a little bit because right before we started recording, we were talking about how physically sore I was
Uh-huh.
We did a pretty heavy duty flip and setup for the next wedding at one of our venues 2 nights ago. And so last night, the soreness finally hit me. So, yes, if you're out there and you are physically tired because you are doing setups and teardowns, I get you. I feel you literally in my bones and my muscles right now. But yeah, we started Common Sense Events. Originally, actually, it was a staffing company and it was in San Diego. We grew that to be pretty much the I would say the best kind of bespoke staffing solution for caterers and venues and planners in the Southern California area. And I say bespoke and custom because it was really focused on high touch customer service. We weren't like your big box staffing company that you might be familiar with. We really focused on caterers, especially that really cared about high touch customer service and staffing those positions for them whenever they needed the extra staff. So we did that. That business actually was acquired right around the COVID time. And in 2018, we had pivoted to venue management. And so then from 2018, pretty much on till now, we've leaned in really more into venue management. We've been picking up venues. We are at 9 venues as of this recording, and really excited. We've done something a little bit interesting that has caused a lot of like business pain, but I also think that we've learned so much. So we started in San Diego. Now we have a location in Connecticut. We're actually building one out here in Alabama, where I currently live. Schematics are right behind me. And I'm a part owner of that one. And then we also have venues in Mississippi, one that we're working with in North Carolina. We also have one in Connecticut already, Georgia, North Carolina. Yeah, and then California. I think I'm getting them all. Yeah. So it's 9, it's at 9. But the reason that's been difficult is because, as you know, venues are so localized and there's so much that you have to learn about a local area to really be successful. Obviously, there's kind of the venue business that you need to learn as well. And so that's really what we bring, those solutions, those marketing solutions, the operational solutions. We bring those to work with venue owners who, like you said, may be tired or maybe they don't want to release the property, but they're done actually running a wedding venue business. And so yeah, it's been a total blast working with the team that we have. We have over 70 employees over the different states that we work with, and many of them are remote, but of course many of them are in person, set up and tear down people at venues, salespeople, venue managers, and things like that. And it's been great. We always something to do, but it's been a fun experience learning this industry. And we just this past December crossed 6,000 weddings that we've helped execute. So it was mind-boggling actually. Like a team member turned us onto it and said, "Hey, I think based on these numbers, we're over 6,000 weddings." And I was like, "No way." And then I went back and looked, and so
That's
crazy
amazing.
stuff.
That is amazing. So why venues? So you did staffing before. What intrigued you specifically about getting into the wedding venue space?
I think a fair amount of naivete.
Mhm.
It was like, as a staffing person, you're doing busing and clearing tables and, serving family style or plated dinners or whatever, and you're looking and you're seeing the venue manager, and sometimes we'd see these venue managers that would just sit in their office and just kind of
Yep.
they'd be on their phone, they'd sit there, they'd just disappear for the rest of the night. Everyone would do all the work. Then the venue manager would come out and become a taskmaster at the end of the night. Clean this up, clean this up. And we
Yep.
were always the ones doing the work. So for us, it was like, that seems like a great job to have. So easy. Little did we know. But the other part of it was, as our business, as the staffing business grew, to really win big financially and from an impact standpoint in the staffing industry, you have to do volume. And we got to the place where we had almost 1,000 employees and contractors, a mixture of those two. And people started becoming numbers. Like it's
Mhm.
impossible that didn't happen. And it kind of felt like the success that we wanted and what we were aiming towards just meant more of that. And so we either needed to develop into a tech platform or we needed to figure something out. And the pandemic also created an interesting scenario where it burned the business down so much. I mean, we lost over $500,000 in contracts with because we had some big events booked and some kind of the big ones you hear, Comic-Con and Stagecoach and, golf tournaments and things like that. And so there it was like everything got burned down. Either we build back way bigger or we pivot a little bit. And so venues came about because I felt like if we were able to have fewer team members, the venue manager, the sales manager, kind of that core group, and those people and by proxy us, were able to impact 100 couples or 80 couples who got married at the venue, and all of the vendors and everyone else that happened. That was a good way to continue that impact that we felt we were having through events, but also have a really close relationship with our team. And so we have that today, and I'm really grateful for that. But that was a big determining factor in the pivot from staffing to venue management.
No, that was a perfect answer. I think that's really great. And and again, I really feel like what you're doing is extremely important. And yeah, you're only one team, right? It's like how many venues and I love seeing that you've grown as much. I think when I first met you, you only had 3. So you guys have grown pretty quickly, which is amazing, and kind of spread out all over the US, which is amazing. So let's just dig in and talk about a couple things that I think listeners would be really interested to hear what you have to say about that. So what are the top 2 or 3 operational priorities a venue owner should focus on when they want to increase client satisfaction and profitability? So I know there's so many things that we could work on, and we've talked about this a lot in my private coaching and on this podcast, but it's like, if there's just a couple things that they could focus on. A lot of people are seeing a downtick in their leads coming in, their sales coming in. Where do you see that people should focus their attention?
So there's a couple different things. I want to focus in on kind of one part first that I think will inform everything else after. I think clarity of action comes from clarity of goal. So if we know what we're aiming for and we're really clear on that, and that's, a very narrow scope, then we can quickly eliminate all the other things that don't, get kind of lead towards that. And so I think for venue owners, it's difficult because, and I've seen this too, even as just an operator and now an owner as well. But I've seen that because you're doing this, but maybe you're doing other things. Maybe you have other businesses, maybe you have other passions or interests. You have a family, and so I think that the real key understanding is why are you in this business? Like, are you in it to grow it and then sell it? Are you a fire starter and you just want to start it and then hand it off to someone else? Is this kind of more of a legacy business where you want to start it and then maybe hand it off to your kids one day or someone in your community? And so you're building it to keep it forever, but you don't want to operate it forever. So kind of like what's the real goal? Because that will focus where you spend your time, your attention, your money.
Totally agree.
So I would start with that in terms of kind of profitability and success from an operations standpoint. Again, we're huge on systems, and I think the number one the question that people ask when I get on calls with prospective venues is, how do you manage a venue in Connecticut or a venue in San Diego or a venue in Mississippi when you're in Alabama? And we got the exact same question when we were in San Diego and we were operating a Connecticut venue from that far away. And a key part of that is systems. So there's definitely things that need to happen on the ground that you can't do remotely. And with that, you've got to have incredible local team members. Like, there's no way around that. So we love our local team members at each one of the venues, but there's a whole framework and system and kind of SOPs and everything that you can have that are kind of like national standards that can be set. And then those are carried out and kind of specified to the unique area. But again, it all comes down to systems. So if you're listening to this today and you don't have a standard way for setting up your venue, or cleaning up your venue, or flipping to a wedding the next day, or if you have lodging on site, there's not a standard set of things that you look for when turning a house over, a hospitality kit, if you're not doing things that are standard. And I know that sounds boring. We love our customization and we love uniqueness and we love all that. I understand that, but there is variety already built into this business just on the merit of the volume of clients that we're getting. Even if you have 15 or 20 or 30 people, I mean, that's 30 times 100 guests, right? That's like, so there is variety built into that, but just focusing on operations, standardizing everything that you can will allow you to be creative and really have some purity in that creativity for the things that you want to focus on, that high touch stuff, the customer relations that you don't want to standardize.
So it's so interesting you said that, because the question is, and I love the way you answered this, because we're talking about client satisfaction and profitability. And here's the thing, listeners, your clients won't be satisfied if they feel like they are getting jerked around in the process too. I love that you're saying that, because it's like, and also you can't be profitable if you're wasting your time recreating the wheel every single time you turn around. like that is a massive time suck, and right, time is money. And so like clients, and I think for your brand too, there needs to be those SOPs so that people understand like this is what the client journey feels like. And when you have satisfied customers, they are going to tell all their friends, and of course that's going to lead to better profitability. But I do think that this is a key area. Venue owners, we say this, like you need to work on your business, not always in your business, right? Like if you are the one physically literally doing all of the heavy lifting, you have no time to step back and think about like, oh my gosh, what are my systems? And sometimes you don't even realize you're so stuck in the weeds until someone like you comes in and it's like, bro, like as the owner, are you sure that this is your time is best spent resetting this venue at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
So
Or
it's
you'll burn out, you'll run out of money. Like there's a number of different ways that this shows up. And I have actually two, like you said that I have two like really quick examples, two different properties way, thousands of miles away from each other. You've got an owner, and these are things that happened kind of prior to us coming in that I was a part of because it was during the onboarding time. There was a wedding that was booked. I'm not going to say any specifics, but there's a wedding that was booked, and they realized that the bridal suite didn't have a bathroom. And so, but there was a house that was connected to the bridal suite, but the plan was to be able to shut off the bridal suite from the rest of the house to be able to kind of independently use those spaces. Well, you have someone who is not part of the bridal party or who is going to be in the house. Then you have a bridal suite, and they're discovering this. And this was again kind of as we're in the interim phase of getting onboarded. And so there's this mad scramble to find out how are we going to get a bathroom for the folks getting ready in the bridal suite. We end up tearing out a portion of the wall to connect it to another room that was across the other side that did have access to a bathroom. Ultimately, and everything way nicer, but the labor and the effort that it took and the stress and the couple who was like, where's our bathroom? Because they didn't think about it because they're trusting it the venue's thinking about it. And then, so this is mad dash. So that's one example. That was crazy stress, a crazy amount of money, like all of that. The second example of that is we have a guest group checking in. They're checking into the Airbnb lodging. As part of that, we were thinking that there's a kind of standard way that people should check in and check out. If you do Airbnb or you do lodging, you kind of know you maybe have a template or something like that on the platform. Well, they're at this specific one, again, we weren't involved yet, but there's not really a standard system. So they're checking in and the owner's kind of telling them different things. Oh, yeah, we have this, we have this, we have that. There wasn't a connection to actually what was happening on the ground. And so the owner had promised that there was a game system there, that there wasn't. And so that group is checking in. Their overall revenue to us is like $2,000. We ended up spending $1,000 to buy a gaming system and some games and set it up. Your $2,000 of profit immediately becomes 1,000, and that's not even counting in the time and other things. So there's just like SOPs. I know it sounds boring, maybe it sounds mundane. You've heard it before, but like if you focus on that and a basic level of service delivery and then build on that, fancy simple scales, fancy fails is the phrase that I
yes,
really enjoy.
yes, yes. No, that's cute. Yeah, it's true. And a lot of times, again, right, we are people pleasers by nature, all of us that are in this is a very service oriented industry, right? And so it's easy to kind of overpromise sometimes because number one, like maybe we're desperate for the sale and we feel like if we just say all of these things, it'll help. But oftentimes you're right, it kind of kicks us in the butt later. But all right, so let's keep talking about like that client experience a little bit. So this is a very interesting time as of when we're recording this. I would say that I've heard people say that their sales are as much as 40% down compared to last year at this time. Not everyone is experiencing that though. I do have a lot of my clients that are having record-breaking years too. But how do you think that venue owners can create a better client experience during that sales and booking process? I know you work with a lot of different sales teams at all your different venues, but the competition is fierce right now, right? Oversaturation is 100% a real thing. So how do you kind of teach your teams to do better at that booking process?
That's such a great question. I think spending like an owner spending their time focused on that is probably one of the number one ways that a venue owner can win, because you can delegate a lot of different things in the business, but understanding how to kind of be uniquely you and what that means and the types of clients that you want to attract and work with, that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Having worked in heavily in the Palm Springs area in California, also having worked in the Northeast in Connecticut, having worked in the South here in Alabama, as well as in Georgia and Mississippi, you're just selling completely different. You're selling to completely different demographics. The pillars are similar, right? There's the hospitality component, there's like the path you're going to take through the venue, your questions, like there's some key things there, but kind of understanding more on specifically how do you show up and create that client experience that's unique to those clients that you're trying to serve is super important. So I would say focusing on hospitality, but not assuming that that is going to carry you through. You have to make sure that the product that you have does match what the client is looking for. And no amount of, and I know and this is weird for me to say because I focus so much on the hospitality side and how you show up and the words you use and things like that. But if your product isn't good and it doesn't compete with the other products in the market, it really, really is important. I'm not saying that the answer is always building a new pergola or a patio or a deck or something like that. But it really is important that if you are located, here and to the closest city center, there's 20 miles or 15 miles, you've got to answer the question, why does someone drive by every other venue that is in that 15-mile distance? Like, why? Is it lodging? And maybe it's not just lodging. Maybe it's the style of lodging, the creativity of the decoration of the rooms. And it's not just going to be they're so nice
Yeah.
anymore, because we are at a point, just like you said, Tirzah, that I think that the competition, I think before, like when we first started, it was so much easier because as long as you showed up and you were like on time and you more
Yeah.
or less like, there were more clients than there were venues. And now it's shifted because I think a lot of people have seen the opportunity through COVID. We saw this right after COVID. We saw this. There's a lot of new entrants into the market. So you do have all this competition. And
Yes.
so what happens when there's competition, everyone kind of like standardizes a little bit more. And now we actually have to work. We can't just show up to the tour and people are going to book. We have to do research on our couples. We have to make sure that our tour process is really well thought through. We need to do a better job with the lead management portion, like not just getting them, because people are doing all this education before, and they have been for a while, but this new generation is like, they're doing silent planning and info gathering like
Yes.
4 to 6 months prior, and then they're going to show up and they're still going to take 6 months to decide, maybe, you know?
Yeah. No, it is so well said. I just did a market analysis for a client that I have in Texas. I spent a month doing it. It was the biggest one I've ever done. And they are in what they call the wedding capital of Texas. It was insane. I researched 90 venues. Of the 90 that I researched, about 25%, hear me, never responded to my inquiry. Can you imagine? Like, never even responded. So it's like, first of all, like if you're listening and you are still like having to manually go in and respond to all of your leads, like that should be something that you fix immediately. You need some automation inside, because if you're not doing it, a lot of times people don't do automation because they don't think it feels authentic, blah, blah, blah. Well, also not responding is terrible. So what's worse, like not responding or having a fair amount of automation? This generation expects automation because they grew up with tech and they understand that that's going to happen. But I love that you said, like, you're driving down and you're passing 20 venues on the way to get to you. I love asking people when they come and sit down in a tour, hey, I know you had to pass 20 venues to get here. Like, how did I win out? And when I say that, it makes them start complimenting my venue by asking them that. Like, I compliment them and also like want to get feedback. And it's a really great way for them to tell you what they specifically like about your venue. Anyway, that's just a little tidbit. But
That's huge.
I love that you were just like, what sets you apart? If you haven't done a market analysis, you have no idea. And that's something that you should know who your competitors are. You in these Facebook groups, Lord help me, people are like asking questions, a Mississippi venue asking a California venue what they do or what they charge or whatever. Like, no, like you need to know your market. That's the only market that matters.
Yeah.
You know,
And And one of the things I've seen also in the Facebook groups, which, love it. It creates
Conversation.
it creates a conversation. It opens, and so that's good in a sense. But the other part of this is you might have a venue owner that has this as like a side hobby business, and they want to get
Yep.
10 or 15 bookings a year. Let me tell you, one of our locations, it does 18. We cannot do, because a couple of different reasons, probably for the next 12 months, we can't do any more than 18 weddings per year. Our average wedding spend is $24,000 for site fees and lodging. We can
Wow.
do 18 events. Okay. So if you do the math there, if I only operated that, if I was the owner of that property, he is an incredible doctor. He is not at the property a ton, like he doesn't actively operate it, but that's his setup. If he jumped into a Facebook group and gave information to someone who needed to run or operate or host 60 to 80 weddings a year at $6,000,
Yep.
is a completely different load in terms of the team, the hiring that he's going to have to do, the operations,
Dude.
the setup, tear down. So you just have to be really careful. Side note on Facebook groups.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, you don't know you don't know who's giving you advice. And I guess that's the bottom line. You don't know. Being and everyone's got something to share. And I agree with that. But again, back to that kind of that initial question, it's like creating that better client experience could be a really tricky thing. Two things I want to say about that. One is this generation, you've heard me say, I call them baby bears. They have decision overwhelm. They have a very short attention span, but they also want to experience. And so it's like there's two things that they want. And it's like, how do you do that? Because you don't want to overwhelm them with information, but you also don't want to rush them through the tour process, because then they get overwhelmed even more. And I was actually chatting with Madeira Estates, Ian Ramirez, and they walked me through their venue last week when I was in Texas. Y'all, like, I'm going to have him on the show soon, but like, I was blown away when they told me that their tour is 2 hours long. And I was like, well, tell me about that. And they were like, we make it a whole experience for them. And so like when we talk about like what kind of interaction is a potential client having when they come to your venue, like when you set it up through like all of your automation before they come, hey, listen, we're going to have an experience together. We're going to have drinks together. We're going to like really, really be able to let you leave here having a full picture of what your event could look like here. And we're not just going to grind you through, back to back to back tours. I think that speaks to this generation.
Totally.
And
So, and Ian is brilliant, like also friend, person I respect a lot in the industry. I think it's very important though for people to hear their style. And like if you walked away, if you're listening or watching this and you walked away from this going, oh, okay, the secret is 2 hour tours.
no.
You're gonna, and I know you weren't saying that, but I'm just saying I know, because I listen to
Yes.
podcasts and things, and I'm like, okay, what can I learn? What can I learn? How can we do
Yeah.
better? You have to realize, like, if you do 2 hour tours, there's only a certain number of tours. So that means that Ian is really doing a great job in qualifying those people, and they're
Yeah.
not showing up until he's like 60 to 70 to
Yep.
80% sure that they're gonna book. And so he's spending the time creating what we call PSO, positive sentiment override. He's creating that on the front side so that as they go through the planning process, and it's brilliant. But again, if your goal is to, you know, do not have a luxury, and what he's having is more of a luxury experience.
It is.
It's a
It is.
Mercedes Benz. Yeah,
And it's a luxury venue. So I think that's the other thing. If you're a DIY venue and it's really cut and dry, like what you're doing, do not do a 2 hour tour. Like, bad idea. Like if you're a DIY venue, I think a 45-minute tour is probably a perfect amount of time. But let me just like close this whole loop by saying this. A lot of people that they're tour guides and they're not they're not salespeople, and I feel like there's such a big difference between being a tour guide and being a really great salesperson, because you could come in and walk people around and share facts, but here's the most important thing that we can learn from, let's just keep using Ian as an example. He's creating a picture. He's like helping them envision what their story could look like being played out at his venue. And I think that's the difference between sharing facts and then taking those facts and putting it into a story for that person because this generation, right, they're very uncreative. They want to think about themselves. They're very me focused. So how can you take that venue and help them see their place there? It's telling stories and helping them see, oh my gosh, like I can imagine what that would look like in the bridal suite. I can imagine this grand exit. Like being a storyteller really is what a great salesperson is, not just reciting facts. So anyway, that's a little soapbox of mine. But a lot of us, we spend so much money getting people to our venue and then do such a crappy job selling it because we're insecure and we're not great salespeople. And that's something that I feel like is so key. All right. I know you're
Well,
a tech guy. Go ahead.
I
Before
wanted
I
to
go,
add
go
something.
ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, and this might be controversial, and it might seem a little like icky as well. But
Say it.
let me just share this. 6,000 weddings in. You know, we all know in high school or college that super popular person, that person that seemed effortlessly talented, that person that was charming with the guys or girls, that person that was just like, they kind of seemed to have it all, you know, and without diving deeper into their personal life or the pain or trauma that they individually have, like we're just saying from an outside observer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now, you know, we also see those people as grown-ups, as adults. You know, you go into a bar or you go into a some sort of environment, a club or whatever, and there's a some sort of social environment, let me be clear. And you get that person that's very beautiful, or that gentleman who's very handsome, that person who's got a great job lined up, whatever. Again, there's this air of like effortlessness, and there's this air of like there's not an air of lack or wanting, or like they seem to have it all the resources, all the connections,
Confidence.
all the confidence, right? Even if it doesn't seem like that, what do those people have? Tons of attention, right? They have text messages. If you open their phone up, they've got 20 text messages of people that are inviting them to drinks and different things. They've got all of this attention. If you open their, you know, Instagram DMs, if you're a girl, all you know, all these guys, hey, what are you doing on Saturday? If you're a guy, maybe it looks a little bit different, but again, there's interest when you appear a certain way and when you're positioned in a
100%.
certain environment. My point in saying this is your venue is very much like that guy or gal in that environment. If you are an extremely attractive, wealthy man in Miami, in the downtown area, you are going to get a lot of attention. You're going to get, and by proxy, you're going to have tons of people who you can't talk to. If you're a girl, same thing, right? I'm just using these as both sides. My point is, if your venue is located in downtown Miami and it's this extremely beautiful big thing on the right on Main Street and no one can miss it as they're walking in and out, you're going to have a lot easier of a time booking because you're going to have the awareness. You obviously have spent millions and millions of dollars on your venue. And so your salesperson, your venue person, or even your leads process, your tour process is not going to have to be that good. You know, just because someone is getting a lot of attention doesn't mean they have a great personality, doesn't mean that they treat you well, doesn't mean any of those things. And so, again, I want you as the listener or watcher to hear this in context of where your venue is located. If your venue is way out, but it's like a hidden gem, you're going to have to work really hard to get people to see you and to understand your value proposition. You're just going to have to work harder at it. If you're in an area that is, you know, you're in a amazing position from a real estate standpoint and from the accommodations that you have and all of that, you may have to work not as hard to win. So what I want to say here, and comparing it to those relationships, even though it doesn't feel great, maybe like relating it directly to those, my point is, if you are a venue that has spent a lot of money on your place, that has, you're in an area that it's easier for you, you're the way that you get better is going to be different than someone who has, like we were just talking about, 20 venues to pass through and maybe is super rural and maybe is DIY and maybe is some of these things. You might be someone who is, let's take that bar scenario to double down there, and you might not, maybe not be the most attractive in the room, but you're going to take care of that person you have a relationship with better than anyone else in the room. You make the best scones. You do whatever it is, right? But
Do you
no
eat
one's gonna.
do you eat scones at bars, Jonathan?
No. Later, after you get married to this person, you're like, Jonathan,
What
what?
kind
Hey,
of
you know
bars
what?
do you go to?
I've got 6 going on 7 kids. I can't. I'm not going to any bars unless they do serve scones. That's what it is for me. But no, really, you have to just make sure that you understand if what you bring to the table is not immediately visible. You've got to find ways to show that in your marketing. You've got to find ways to get people to your location to really understand your value proposition in a way that other really large venues, venues that are stunning, gorgeous, that have someone has spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on. And that's okay. Like, we all have a place, we all have a way that we can be successful, but don't try to be successful in the same way that someone else is able to achieve success, because you're going to miss the area that's easiest for you to, overachieve and over deliver on your unique value proposition. That was my
No,
rant
no, no, no.
rant
It's
over.
really good. I think this is stuff that is very helpful for people. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying. Like, every venue is different, every need is different. Everyone is going to have like different objections, right? So a good salesperson understands how to deal with the objections of that specific location. And so again, being honed in on what sets us apart. What are the objections? How do I speak to this specific clientele that I know is coming to me? Because you're a Miami venue. Someone coming to a Miami venue has definitely different needs than someone in Alabama, like
Totally.
barn venue, whatever. So really, really great. All right, let's move on to the next thing. And I know that we could probably spend a whole episode talking about tech and tools and systems and all that kind of stuff, but I wanted to make sure that we hit on this. What are some of the behind the scenes systems or tools that you use at CSE that are kind of like, these are non-negotiables? Like, we have to have these tools in order to run smooth, like high running venues. So what are some of your like everyday tools?
Great question. Like everything, they are contextual to what we're trying to do. So check these out. But I would go so far as to say it's impossible to have a smooth running operation without a project management tool of some sort. We use Asana. There are tons out there. There's ClickUp, there's Monday.com, there's Asana. Notion has capabilities, Basecamp has capabilities, but using a project management tool is essential, whether you have all small venue, maybe you're running 5 to 10 events per year, or if you have a really high volume place that is going to be doing 100, 120, 160. We're there, just to provide context. Smallest venue in terms of volume does 18, and then our top, we're going to be around 160 per year. Using a project management tool is key. We like Asana. The other things I would say is some sort of, especially in this day and age with AI, you need an AI recorder to be in your meetings, and you need some way to record the conversations that you have. And the reason for that is, here's, let's say you and I work together. You're the owner of the venue. I'm your operations director. I'm your catering salesperson, or whatever my role is. If you and I have a coaching call where you're telling me about doing different things, you're going to be communicating that, whether it's on the phone or Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. If you can pick up the transcript of that call, put it into ChatGPT or put it into Claude or whatever AI tool you use, and say, please give me the bullet points, and then you can email that to them as a recap. That's super powerful. So some sort of AI tool. We like Fathom. We use something called Fathom, but there's Otter AI. There's like a number of different ones out there. Just look for AI recording. Like, if you put that into Google, it'll give you a couple options. So
And you
project
can use
management
that
tool.
also with clients, right? So if you have in-house planning and you have a Zoom meeting or something with one of your clients, that you could record that, do the same exact thing and be like, hey, here's what we talked about, here's what I'm working on, here's what I need you to do, blah, blah, blah. Very, very helpful.
I'm gonna double down here really quick. So in CSE, we're creating we're calling it a concierge, but what it is like a central mind to our whole business. So we've created our own GPT, and we've loaded all of the contracts and all of the SOPs, and everything that we do is loaded into basically a huge document. And we've used that document to train our own GPT. And we're right now just using it as an internal resource, because we really don't feel comfortable yet in having clients use it, because it's not always right. There's hallucinations, there's these different things. But starting to do that for your business, I don't think it's premature to start creating like a snapshot, essentially, of what your business is, the rules and regulations that you have, the hours that you're of operation, the contact information, some of these different things, because we're getting to a place with AI where we're going to be able to run our businesses with some sort of engine that influences the sales side, that influences internal operations. And so, spending some time, even if you're not using an AI tool actively, just starting to compile that list, that central list of, again, SOPs, your contracts, your rules and regs. And you can do that very passively by recording a lot of your calls to
Mhm.
kind of bring it full circle.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of a little bit older generation of people in the venue space. I think the younger generation is coming up, but a lot of venue owners are very afraid of technology. And I just want to tell you, like, AI is not something to be afraid of. Now, listen, there are parts of it that do still freak me out. I mean, really and truly. Like, it's kind of scary how powerful AI can be, but just play around with it. Even if you just go to, like, just open up Chat GPT and just experience what it could do. Ask it questions, like, have it just play with it a little bit if you've never done it before you get freaked out by saying, I'm not going to integrate this into my calls or anything, because you can't ignore the AI is here. It is here and it is never going anywhere. So I mean, Jonathan, most people do not have the tools or resources to create their own AI mind like you are doing. So I'm not surprised you're doing that, because you're incredible. But it's leaning into what is already in front of us. And I think that that's what's great about what you're doing.
Yeah. I guess though what I'm saying and I don't like we have a team member, she's our systems administrator who's done the bulk of this work. So our situation, like I said, it's going to be different than other folks. But what I'm trying to say is if you're recording your calls to kind of take that back, if you're recording your training calls with your team, if you're doing as much as possible to record the words that are coming out of your mouth, you'll later, never mind today, but a year from now, you'll be able to say, let's go back and let's take all of the transcripts from all those calls and let's put it into something. So just give yourself the gift, give your future self the gift of documenting today so that later when you're ready to use that information, you have it available. And it's not like, I wish I would have recorded that back then.
No. So let me give you a real life example at my venue. I had a mentor once that told me, if you ever find yourself saying the same thing more than 3 times, you record a video and it just sits there in a repertoire and you just send it out to people. And I was head of HR at our venue. We had 35 employees, 8 full-time employees, and the rotating door of part-time employees is just very common in the event space, right? This is not a full-time gig. And I found myself spending on average 45 minutes to an hour onboarding every new employee. And one day I was sitting there and I literally hit myself in the head. I'm like, you're so stupid, Tirzah. Why? You know better. What is your problem? And it literally changed my life. I did not prepare at all. I texted my husband. I said, come to my office, sit right here. I clicked record, and we just, because we did it so much, we didn't even have to plan. And we did our whole onboarding call. It was 40 minutes and we would just send it out. And then when we got on a call to interview people, it was literally like 5 to 10 minutes long, because they had already, like, the final interview, they'd already listened to everything, and it was a total game changer. And then we knew everyone was getting the same information. And that, yeah, total game changer for us. Okay.
Heck, also, let me just add, there is something to that same thing called Trainual that I would check out. There's also a couple of other tools that are coming, but a system like Trainual is helpful for training team members. It allows them to check off, or you'll see that they've done it. Loom is huge. So Loom is a screen recorder, great for teaching someone how to do something like a salesperson you're onboarding. If you create a Loom video, maybe you want to not do payroll. You want to pass off the payroll responsibility to someone else. Loom record. So what Loom is just a screen recorder. It records your screen. You can talk to it, and also there's a little like bubble that you can see yourself. So Loom is good. Trainual we talked about. Asana, Fathom for recording. What else? A digital. Please, 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 please. If you do one thing, use a digital phone system. Like, don't use your cell phone. And the reason for this is if you use a digital phone system, we use something called Dialpad. But if you use something like a digital phone system, Grasshopper, I mean, there's a bunch of them. If you do, a lot of these do have AI tools. A lot of them will create a call recording. Again, give your future self the gift of recording this information and having it in a standard thing. Because if you offboard one salesperson, or if you decide one day, God forbid, you're not going to do all of the things, you want to pass this knowledge bank over. And if you're not going to give them your cell phone. You can't give someone your cell phone, but you will give them access into a digital phone system that has the text messages and the calls. And you can say, here, Sally, the salesperson, pick up where I left off. This is the conversation that's been happening. And they'll see it and boom, they'll be able to get right on board. So Digital phone system.
No, that's awesome. Most people aren't staying in these jobs forever that work for us, right? And so, I mean, there is a gazillion different phone services that could do that. I think we did ours through GoDaddy. And the cool thing with that too is when they call, you know, it's coming through your website or coming through, it's a work call. And then you're not having to carry two phones around either. I mean, who wants to do that? So I love that. One other quick SOP in terms of like efficiency and all that kind of stuff. We physically have little 5x7 clipboards that have checklists for every single like position, like main position that we have. And every part-timer comes in, they know what role they have, they grab their clipboard at the end of their shift. They have to make sure all of those responsibilities are done. They hand it back to the GM. We know because they're doing 4 weddings in a weekend that there's no like, oh, well, I didn't do 2 of those things. It's like, no, you're not done until you do that. That has been a game changer. The other thing is that we do have a group chat, and I find a lot of value in, like, we use WhatsApp, just because
Art. Love
iPhone,
it.
Android war. WhatsApp has been a game changer for our part-time. So we have one that's a part-time chat and one that's full-time. And then we have one specific to different like groups, bartenders, dish guys, whatever. And then we have one that is just a manager broadcast. So we're like, hey guys, and they don't respond on this one. It's like, hey, here's something that you need to know about this upcoming event. It's not a conversation. It's like, hey, we have a start time. It's an hour earlier, just reminding you, or whatever it is, or an operational thing like, hey, someone took out the trash and didn't do this, and this. This is what you need to do moving forward. So that really has created efficiency. And the other app that I use a lot is called Any List. And I actually use it in my family as well. But like we put all of our to-do tasks, and I know you use Asana. We don't use that in-house, but Any List, you could create different categories of to-do lists that have to be done, and people could check it off as they did it. Again, it's very similar to Asana, but very simple because it's just literally a list. So then my husband's on there, and I have a grocery list. So if he's driving home and he wants to jump by the store, he doesn't even have to ask. He sees it all in there. So that has been a game changer. Any List.
Love that.
Okay, let's couple more questions here, and we got to wrap up because we're almost at our time. Where do you see 2 things? Where do you see the biggest opportunities for venue owners to create additional revenue? I love talking about that. And then the last question is, what are some mindset shifts that you feel would be really helpful for venue owners in this crazy climate that we are dealing with right now? So wrap it up, bro.
Yeah, in terms of the revenue, I want to really caution you, like walk before you run. So if you're gonna start a venue and you're like, we're gonna do venue, we're gonna do bar, we're gonna do catering, we're gonna rent out this, we're gonna do that, like you got to realize that each one of those things has its own unique business cycle. Catering, for example, or bar, there's different licenses you have to get for bar. It varies widely, like crazy difference per state. California alcohol is so different than Connecticut and
100%.
is so different than ABC here in Alabama. Like, and we're all over the place. Same thing with North Carolina, same thing with Mississippi. Like, it's very, very different. So, liquor laws, sometimes you've got to get, you've got to be bonded, you've got to go, and there's a lengthy license process. Sometimes it's very easy. So, just understand that, like, even if you're going to run a photo booth business or a catering company, like, those are individual businesses that you need to have awareness on, or you need to hire a talented operator, and then there's some risks in doing that. So without getting, I mean, we could spend a whole podcast just on that, but I would say as you're thinking about revenue streams, think about bar. Bar is a fairly easy, say fairly easy.
I was going to say back up, not fairly easy.
Yeah.
For some
I,
people, maybe.
well, so bar, the thing with the bar is it is hard. I think it's difficult, but the reward is fairly high. So like, cost versus like what it will cost you to get it going versus if you execute it correctly, how much money you can make. Very, very good profit center. I would say, again, getting your core offering. So that may be just the venue, get that really down well. And
Dialed in. Yep.
yep. And then add things that people want to do that are maybe already there's stuff they're bringing in. So photo booths, maybe some decor options, maybe some coordination options. And you don't have to do everything yourself. You can also, like I said, partner with people. And there's a kind of an art to that as well. But one thing I would say is start simple. If you start simple and then watch consumer behavior at your venue. Tirzah can tell you something. I can tell you something that's worked for us. You might be in Ohio and you might say, I'm seeing our clients always walk to this part of the property because there's a beautiful view there. So people walk there. There's no fencing, there's no path there. They just kind of go over there. Maybe I should make a little deck there. Or everyone, every single time, always rents in a photo booth. Okay, instead of having them rent in a photo booth. So just track the consumer behavior, because then you'll eliminate the risk that you're wrong. Like, you'll know people always want a photo booth. So then
Yep.
you can go and invest $2,000 in a photo booth or $5,000 in a sweet photo booth setup. They'll rent it all day long. You'll
Yes.
know for sure that people are going to be interested in that.
Right. Solve problems. That's the way we make money. Solve problems. And it's not necessarily a problem, it's a need. Figure out how to meet their needs, and you're going to be able to increase profit. So, and
And from a mindset standpoint, there's two ways to see the difficulty. I remember as a server, the first time I heard this, I was a server at Yard House, a Darden property. It was right during the time when they got acquired by Darden, which is a very large conglomerate of restaurants. And they changed a subtle shift and change of the wording. Instead of saying, hey, this is a problem that we need to talk about or whatever, they said this is an opportunity for improvement.
yep.
It's a slight little shift. I had one of my marketing gals send me a PDF today, long PDF. She'd done a ton of research on why, marriage rates are declining and why leads are declining. And specifically, she was doing research, but she was highlighting Southern California and she was highlighting the Connecticut market. And there are two ways to look at that document, because it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty, folks. I'll tell you right now, if you're thinking about starting a venue in one of those locations, or just be ready to spend so much money, and maybe you're in it for the love of it, which I love that. Do it then for sure. But it's not an easy industry right now.
No.
And I think it's going to get harder before it gets easier. But there's two ways to look at a document like that. One is like, well, that's how things are. Marriage rates are declining. Things are more difficult. Well, I don't know. Like, just kind of shrug your shoulders and let's just
An Eeyore
be
mindset. Yeah.
Eeyore. There we go. There we go. Or you can have, using Winnie the Pooh, more of that, Tigger mindset, where you're just kind of bouncing everywhere and you're like, hey, let's figure this out. And you're more positive. I think the best way to look at what we're seeing in the industry is not reactionary, very kind of calm, saying, what are we seeing? Is the report that just came out on US News, or some report from the Nodder Wedding Wire, or some report from something, is that relevant to my business? So ask yourself that question. The next thing is, and this is just talking about mindset, because the mindset that you have is going to relate to your energy, and the energy you bring to your team, or you bring to your couples, or you bring to your venue. So pivotal. So just kind of think like, is all that information relevant to me, or do I need to be concerned about it or afraid of it? And then the next thing is, where is the opportunity? Because the same problem that you face is a competitive moat. If you've solved it, it's a competitive moat to everyone else.
Yep.
If you've figured out a way to fix it. And there are so many ways to do this. There's partnering with vendors, and there's so many ways to be successful even in a downturn. Maybe it's focusing on smaller weddings, or weddings where you're doing less and you're allowing the couple to bring in or not bring in more, so it actually lowers the overall cost. So going into that DIY model, maybe it's not, maybe it's going the other way. Your DIY used to be DIY, now you're adding in packages that simplify and reduce the expense, so you're still giving couples what they want.
Yep.
Maybe you're finding ways to diversify into corporate or social. Corporate's definitely not right for everyone. I will say it's kind of a pipe dream for a lot of folks, because the venue's not set up for it. But again, the mindset piece, either you're going to see the difficulty and treat it as a stopping point, or you're going to see the difficulty and use it to inform the way
I
that
love that.
you grow your success.
No, that is so well said. I was at an event last week, and we were just having this like social conversation, and I had met this new person, and she asked what I did, and I told her, and she was like, wow, being a venue owner seems like it'd be a pretty easy gig, like easy money, man. Like, that sounds really sweet. My friend, it was actually Derek, was standing right behind her with pitched, and you could see his eyes got really big. And my husband said it was like Jarek was like, I'm here for the comments. Like, how the heck is Tirzah going to respond to this? My mouth went dry. I'm like, what? I don't even know how to respond to this person. So I just smiled and just like started talking with someone else. Cause I was like, nothing nice is going to come out of my mouth right now. But it's like, it's harder than ever. And Jonathan and I aren't saying that to discourage you. There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are kind of in a newer phase, because you're trying to absorb all of the information that you can, and you're really trying to be successful, and we get that. And I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm just saying, like, it's totally, I'm reinforcing what Jonathan is saying, is like, be educated, like, be strategic. You don't have the time or money to just throw noodles at the wall. Like, you have to be strategic in everything that you do. Like, it really, really matters. And I think a lot of us get into this and we're not, like, we're really great at producing events. Oh, I planned my own wedding, so I think it'd be super fun, or to own a venue someday, or I was a photographer and I saw all these crappy venues and I thought I'm going to open a really good one, or, you know, whatever reason got you into this. That's great. Like, follow your dream. I agree with what Jonathan is saying, but now more than ever, you have to be a student. You have to be learning. You cannot put your head in the sand and ignore AI like we were talking about. You can't ignore market saturation. You cannot ignore the fact that weddings are declining. In the next 10 years, we're going to have a very different world. A lot of boomers are going to be selling their venues. We're going to have what's going to happen with all those venues that are going to be sitting out there? You know, we might have an opposite problem where people are, I don't know what 10 years is going to look like. I wish I did, but we have to be engaged and be proactive and not reactive, like Jonathan said. I think that is absolutely huge. Anyway, we've gone longer than planned today, but if you've made it this far in the podcast, kudos to you. Thank you for hanging out with us. But I want to say a little bit more about Jonathan before I let you go. So he is also the one that started WEVA, the Wedding and Event Venue Association. So we're so grateful for the effort that you put there. And also, many of you listening to this podcast also listen to the Venue RX. If you haven't heard of them, we will definitely put the link in the show notes to go take a listen. He's got years of incredible content over there, so be sure and check that out. Jonathan, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, we'll definitely put your contact info in the show notes. But any last closing words that you would have for listeners today?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're listening to this, like, kudos to you. Like really seriously, because listening and learning, like Tirza just said, it is really kind of that key step. You have to do more than just listen and learn. Obviously, you have to act and you have to be action oriented, and you've got to take and apply the input that you're receiving from these resources. But doing this, listening to Tears' podcast, listening to my podcast, The Venue RX, listening to other ones out there, there are resources out there. There's more resources, I think, certainly today than there were back in 2020 when I started my show. And the kind of a shameless plug on the Venue RX, like, we've had Tirzah on. We've had so many other incredible people in the industry who really know their stuff, who are really, really knowledgeable. And it helps because you can go there, you can spend time going through those episodes or going through Tirzah's episodes and learn from our mistakes. Like,
Yes, please.
take this and let's elevate the industry. So yeah, kudos. Definitely connect with us on the Venue RX. You know, give us a shout if you listen, if you heard about us from Tirzah's show. And you know, we also have a venue owner series. I know, Tirzah, I think you've done some venue owner interviews as well. So
for sure.
if you're not camera shy, you'd love to come on and share your story about your venue and the process that you've been in owning a business, we'd love to talk with you.
I love it. I love your show. I loved being on. It's these are free resources, right? Like, there's not like, let me promise you, Jonathan and I are not making tons of money.
Yeah.
Can I dare say any money off of doing this? Like, this is truly our give back. It is our give back that we want to elevate the industry. And I know that Jonathan and I both share that passion for sure. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jonathan. And for the viewers and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next time on the Venue Success Podcast.